This meeting of New Philadelphia City Council will now come to order. Would you please rise and remain standing for the invocation and pledge of allegiance? Invocation tonight by Councilman Steve Burbank.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you join me in prayer, please? Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the abundant blessings that you've placed on our community and on each of us that we can be here tonight, Lord. We thank you for this opportunity to fulfill our callings, to serve both our citizens and your will here in this building. Father, would just help us to do the useful work that comes before this body. Help us to use wisdom and discernment in all the decisions that we make, despite the many different and diverse opinions that will come before us and the many different opinions of what should or shouldn't be done, Lord. We just trust in you to guide and direct our wills to do your will. Father, we do all of this in the matchless name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. I'd like to welcome our guests here this evening and also those that are on YouTube. Welcome to our council meeting. We'll start off with roll call.
Mr. Holland.
Present.
Mr. Lanzer.
Present.
Mrs. May.
Present.
Mr. Pace.
Present.
Mrs. Ramos.
Present.
Mr. Ricklick.
Present.
Mr. Rippett.
Present.
All right, thank you, Ms. Courtwright. Everybody's had a chance to review the agenda for tonight. Are there any additions to the agenda? Hearing none, I accept a motion to accept the agenda tonight. Mr. Alonso, thank you. Need a second?
I'll
Mrs.
second.
Ramos? In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mr. Rippett.
Yes.
All right, minutes. Everybody's had a chance to review the minutes from our last council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve. Mrs. May, thank you.
Second.
Mr. Holland, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mr. Rippett.
Yes.
All right, correspondence, Ms. Courtwright.
To council and administration from Auditor Beth Gundy dated April 11th, 2023. This is an email with a sample bill that the water office will send to those with credits. To council and administration from Councilman Dean Holland. This is dated April 14th, 2023. This is an email titled Health Department Annual Report. And that is what was the attachment. To council and administration from Mayor Day dated April 20th, 2023. This is an email titled City Planning Commission Recommendation for the New Location for the Homeless Shelter. And this was replied to by Councilwoman Ramos. To President Kemp from Law Director Fate dated April 21st, 2023. This is an email titled Please Assign to the Special and Contact Committee with proposed resolutions 7, 8, and 9 as the attachments. President Kemp asked Mr. Rippeth to take all three pieces of legislation into his committee. And to council and administration from Mayor Day dated April 24th, 2023. This is the mayor's report, and this was replied to by Mrs. Ramos.
All right, thank you, Ms. Courtwright. All right, we move into our administrative reports. First up, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members, fellow administrators, and guests. A couple things I want to touch on from the report that I emailed to you earlier today. Local realtors that I've spoken to recently have said that there's been an increased interest in purchasing homes in residential areas to operate as short-term rentals, more popularly known as Airbnbs or VRBOs. The city doesn't necessarily want to discourage this type of business development, but it does need to be regulated just like our hotels and our motels. Presently, short-term rentals are not required to meet the code requirements, have inspections, or collect and remit lodging tax, as the hotels and the motels must do. Apparently, the state legislature is no longer interested in enacting legislation to address this issue, so I'm asking you, Council President Kemp, to assign the development of short-term rental regulations to the appropriate council committee. Law Director Fate has draft legislation that the committee can use to get started. And last Wednesday, a kickoff meeting was held between the city administration, Quixel and Associates, and the Ohio Department of Transportation. Its purpose was to begin planning for the 2024 construction of the Kent State Tuscarawas Bicycle and Pedestrian Trail to downtown New Philadelphia. The construction plans drawn up by Quixel and Associates will be reviewed over the next couple of months to measure environmental and traffic impact. And then an open house will be on Monday, July 10th, to gather public comment on the project. And that'll be on the Monday of a council meeting, so it'll be at 6:30 PM prior to council's regular meeting that night. That concludes my report. Any questions? Yes?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. I know we've talked in planning commission about the short-term or the Airbnb rental regulations. But, my concern as a resident and a council person is the rental properties in the city.
Did you see my reply to your email?
No, I didn't check my email after 4. So I'm gonna
Okay.
say it anyways.
Yeah, there's no reason why, if the law director has the legislation ready for rental registry, no reason why council can't deal with them both at the same time.
Okay, that was mine, because I know you said that a couple months ago was ready to
Yeah, you're
go.
actually gonna have 3 pieces of legislation coming at you. You're gonna have rental registration, vacant property legislation, and the Airbnb one.
Yeah.
The Airbnb one's actually been done for a while now. We were kind of
Yeah,
waiting to see what the.
2 years ago.
Yeah, we've been kind of waiting to see what the legislature's
I'm
gonna
waiting for
do.
the legislature. So my priority is the rental property, not the short-term, of course, because I
There's no
live in a
reason why
neighborhood.
council can't deal with both of them.
Right, but I'm just saying my priority is the other. We can deal with, you can do more than one thing at a time.
Sure. I would
Um,
hope so, yeah.
But again, I'm just gonna say, it's not safe to have multiple families and multiple people living in single-family homes and people living in the basement without egress windows. I see a lot that, then there's children involved too. And so I continue to get complaints from my constituents and neighbors about the trash, the number of cars parked, like a mini car lot in front of a single-family home. I know most of us have more than one car. And my family, we each have a car, and my husband and I, and then we have an emergency when one breaks down, we have something to drive. And we've used it quite a bit. So I will look at your reply, and I thank you, because I just wanna, you can tell I'm growing frustrated, because I keep hearing from my residents, and I've been saying it for a number of years. I know, beating on the same drum about the rental properties that are just, it's overwhelming. And as a homeowner, your biggest single investment is your home. And you want to be safe there, you want to have a nice neighborhood, decent one, not talking about, a $1.5 million home or anything. I don't live in that neighborhood, by the way. So I'm glad. I will look forward to that. And we can do more than one thing at a time.
Good.
I'd like to assign that to Mr. Alonso, Economic Development Committee.
Will do,
To
sir.
take that under consideration.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Mr. Hall?
Is that gonna be all 3? I'm sorry.
yes,
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a comment.
yes.
I would like to see the law director in his development of legislation to include Airbnbs in the overall bed tax. I think that's an important aspect of what we need to include in that legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, any others? All right,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Mayor Day. All right, move on to Service Director, Mr. McAbeer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go over quite a few things tonight. Last week, We held the pre-construction meeting for the improvements on Glen Drive. Have a tentative start date of May 8th. As we know, that'll be our next council meeting. I'll update at that time due to construction and the fact that weather changes those most of the time. Also, the 2022 CDBG project is wrapping up. We had some money left on the grant. If anybody noticed, out on Second Street Northeast, from Minnick Avenue Northeast to the alley, they installed roughly 200 feet of new sidewalk there. So that is the end of the 2022 CDBG project. Also, if anybody's been down to the skate park, the renovations that we had talked about, that we got the grant for, and we had the GoFundMe page, and then our $11,000 that we put in. That started Thursday, Friday, and it was down there again today. Benchmark Construction is doing that project. They're gonna put 2 guys on it. The biggest part of the rest of this week, it should be done. So again, that started too. Also, the docks are both in, at 416 and also at the Waterworks Park. So, just wanna make everybody aware of that, and that's the end of my report.
All right, any questions for the service director? Yes, Mr.
Mr. Mac-
Rickley.
Mr. McBeer, the line on North Broadway that Tucson did, do they have a projected time they're gonna tear that out and hot mix that?
They do not yet, no.
Okay. And then the other thing, the truck traffic off of Glen Drive, will that be probably heading out to Broadway, in and out, when they do the Glen Drive project?
Truck traffic?
Yeah, for the tear out and demo
For the construction.
construction project they're doing on Glen Drive.
Oh, where they go? We haven't talked about that, but we
Okay.
can.
Just so I know, just so I can tell the neighbors, that's all. Because they'll be asking. as soon as you
Yeah,
start.
I can find that
They'll be
out.
calling.
I'll find that out.
All right, that's all. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Mr. McAbeer. Move on to the Safety Director, Mr. Popham.
Thank you, Mr. President, no report.
You're not gonna talk about the push into the fire truck?
Other than the push-in, sorry about that. The push-in was a success again. Mother Nature worked out and we probably had 100 people there.
Yeah.
So, once again, another fine thing to celebrate.
Yes, it was a nice piece of equipment there we've got here in our community, so. All right, we'll move on to Auditor. Ms. Gundy's not here tonight. We'll move on to Treasurer, Mr. Gerber.
No report, sir.
All right, we'll move on to Law Director, Mr. Fate.
Thank you. First of all, I apologize for my attire. I literally ran here from coaching Little League Baseball, and I'm just now getting the feeling back in my fingers. But we had to make sure we practiced tonight, even though we were the only team on the field, because we play for Kemp Insurance. And we want to make sure that we can beat Pace Sandcar, which is Councilman Pace's team, which is our second game of the season next week. What I wanted to ask, Mr. President, as I mentioned earlier, the vacant property legislation and the rental registration property, if you could assign that to committee tonight, that's really all I need for
I
purposes.
did, I signed it, Mr. Alonso.
Oh, okay, I thought that was just the Airbnb one.
No, all
Oh, you did all three of them?
three.
All right, I apologize, I wasn't here. And if you see me on my phone tonight, it's because in running back here from the baseball field, I didn't have time to stop and get my computer. So I'm gonna be looking at my legislation over here. I promise I'm not texting, I am not checking the Guardians score or the Cavs or whoever's playing tonight. So, I will be following the legislation on my phone because I did not have time to pick up my laptop. In addition, we're gonna be having an intern, in our office that I spoke to last Friday and arranged for him to meet with my chief prosecutor. They talked to him on the phone today, and it's got a last name you might have heard of. It's Ernest. Gabe Ernest is going to be helping us out and comes from a very good family, and looking forward to having him on board. And I've had two interns that went on to work for me, and one is now a county prosecutor. So we have a good history with our interns. They come here and they do a great job. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Fate. All right, move into our board commission reports. Planning Commission, Mayor Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. The planning commission will be meeting the second Tuesday of May. And we look at that'll be the 9th at 1 PM. If there is any items that need to be put on the agenda, otherwise I will say, we're going to have a meeting with Wendy Moeller of Compass Point Planning on the 15th at 1 PM. I hope you can make that. She'll be going over her progress so far in rewriting the city's zoning and signage regulations. So I've invited all council members, planning commission members, members of the Downtown Design Standards Board of Review to attend, and then also it'll be streamed live to YouTube and also be recorded, so if you want to watch it at a later date, you can do that.
All right, thanks, Mayor Day. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mr. McAbeer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board of Zoning Appeals met April 11th, here in council chambers at 5 PM with one variance request to be heard. The address was 135 12th Street Northeast, which was a side setback requirement, 1161.08C, was voted on and was granted on a 4-0 vote. That's the end of my report.
When's our next meeting?
It'll be the 9th at 5 PM in the council chambers.
All right.
May 9th, 5 PM.
All right. Any question, Mr. McAbeer? Now we move on to Airport Commission, Mr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Airport Commission will be meeting here at council chambers May 9th at 6 PM.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to Park Board, Mr. Pace.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, no report this evening, but the first annual Trout Derby will be held this Saturday. I've been talking about it for the last 6 months, I think, so it's gonna be a great event for the kids. It starts at 8. Come out and catch them trout, so.
That's right, they're gonna stock it on Thursday, right?
They're stocking on Thursday.
So
the
no
pond-
fishing on Friday.
Yeah,
They
there's
catch-
no fishing on
can't-
Thursday or Friday, and then all kinds of fishing on Saturday, so.
All right, gonna be a
Stop
good
out.
day out there.
Yeah,
Be a
it's gonna be a
great
great
day.
Mr. Pace,
Yes.
did I read correctly that there's gonna be 1,200 trout? now?
Yes, 1,200 trout will be stocked on Thursday afternoon.
Wow, okay.
So catch 5, keep them, take them home and eat them.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Holland.
comment to Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Recognizing that we're doing this for the kiddos, I would hope at some point you would give some consideration for a similar tournament for seniors.
What age group are you referring to?
Well, I was referring to those on the upper end and that we're allowed to use a net.
65 and up.
60, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Pace. Health Board, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. The City Health Board met Wednesday, April the 12th, here in the council chambers. And among the items discussed was the 2022 annual report for the City Health District. A copy of this report has been forwarded to council members electronically. And as specific items for review, I would point to the letter from the Health Commissioner, Vicky Iono, pointing out health inequities and barriers to healthcare that many people face in our community. The barriers were met head-on by the City Health Department, and service to the community continued in spite of those barriers, especially during the height of the pandemic. Change is continuing to happen in the City Health Department with personnel retirements and new personnel coming on board, along with continued workload increases in the areas of health investigations, continued dramatic increases in patient immunization efforts, and the need for translation services. I would also point to the workforce development training in the report and the furtherance of skills and performance of public health workers. I would encourage contacting the Health Commissioner with any questions or comments council or citizens might have. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holland. All right, move into our council committee reports. First up, finance, Mr. Rickley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no formal report this evening.
All right. Public Works and Economic Development, Mr. Lanzer.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report this evening.
All right, Safety, Health, and Service, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. President. There has been no committee meeting and I have no formal report.
Thank you. Zoning and Annexation, Mrs. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. President, no report.
Look at Amy. We're Salary Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President, no report.
All right, thank you. All right, Parks and Cemetery, Mr. Pace.
Thank you, Mr. President. No report this evening.
All right, last is Contact and Special, Mr. Rippeth.
Thank you, Mr. President. No formal report, however, I would like to schedule a meeting of that committee for Monday, the 8th of May, at 6:45 here in council chambers to discuss the legislation you presented in committee tonight.
All right, got it.
Thank you.
All right. All right, floor is now open for visitors' comments. Anyone wishing to address council should rise, state their name and address, and address all comments to me, the chair. And we are allowing 5 minutes. If you wish to talk, we need to have you go to the podium.
Let me make sure.
Wait.
It's good.
It's good? All right.
Yeah.
All right, sir, you're on.
Good evening, council. I'm Jacob Gilmore. I live at 3159 Ray Street Southeast, and we're here to discuss the discussion points on the opposition of the Brightwood community of the proposed site of the homeless shelter at the old Twilight Drive. I'd like to start out with a quote from the Facebook of the Friends of the Homeless made on December 5th of 2022. Friends of the Homeless would like to stay in New Philadelphia for many reasons, such as we are walking distance to the courthouse, the probation department, 2 of the county's employment agencies, downtown businesses for our guests and employment, and to the mental health and substance use provider. The actual location distance from the courthouse is 3.5 miles from this proposed location. It is 3.5 miles from the probation department, 3.5 miles from ManCan, 5.4 miles from the unemployment office, 3.4 from the Pathway to Wellness, 3.7 from the Tuscarawas Public Library, 3.4 miles from the Central Business District Edge. The closest consistent amount of sidewalks is 2.3 miles. Yerkesville Macaulay Drive is 4.1 miles. The Yerkesville edge of town is 5.9 miles, as you cannot walk across the 4-lane. Trinity Health System is 5.9 miles away, and Union Hospital is 5.7. Is this really helping the homeless to move the structure 3.5 miles away from every needed resource? It is also property of the Indian Valley School District that is 3.4 miles from the elementary school, 5.4 miles from the middle school, and 12 miles from the high school. How are parents going to get to their kids? And where are these kids going to play? We are surrounded by State Route 250, State Route 259, and East Hyde, which are all heavily used. 259 leads into the industrial park, semis and traffic are constant, and this is also the exit for Kent State University Tuscarawas. We'd also like to ask if there has been a third-party city planner review this as a valid location to build a shelter, and also if there has been $383,000 raised as claimed in the Times Report article, why can this not be used to upgrade the current building? Also, Brightwood has some safety concerns. Brightwood is an area with roughly 175 residential houses, 15 commercial businesses. If we assume 2 people a home, that is 350 people right next to the proposed shelter. Brightwood does not have sidewalks, we have very few street lamps, and we are surrounded by cornfields on the backside, making it a relatively isolated area. Residents walk at night, kids play here because it is currently a safe area, which may no longer be the case. In this letter from the city cited Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Department and the Ohio State Highway Patrol as reasons as why this would be a safe area. The Ohio State Highway Patrol does not have any jurisdiction over our area, as their jurisdiction pertains only to the roads and state-owned or leased buildings. The Sheriff's Department would not have any jurisdiction over the pro site as well, as it is within the New Philadelphia city limits. However, any calls to our location in Brightwood would not be handled by the New Philadelphia Police Department and will be subject to the jurisdiction of the Sheriff's Department, which covers over 600 square miles and potentially could take 20 minutes to respond if there was not an officer close to our location. Also, currently it's claimed there's no violent offenders, no sexual offenders, and no arsonists are allowed at the shelter. We ask, will the criteria remain the same if state funding is involved, as it appears some state and federal funding hinges upon the inclusion for everyone regardless of past offenses. In regards to background checks, we would like to know how they are performed. Will the process of using background checks stay in place? Will the criteria remain the same if state funding is involved? And also, kind of most importantly to us, what happens to the people who are turned down from the shelter? These people have only one place to go, and that's directly into our neighborhood, to our yards, to our sheds, and God forbid, our homes. Also, the issue of safety for the homeless. There are no sidewalks to use. There are no crosswalks to use. No pedestrians to walk, no place for pedestrians to walk across either bridge to get into town, as you have to cross a bridge either way to get into the central district. Commercial traffic from the industrial park, Cooper Standard, RJ Cylinder, Battle Motors, you have ODOT there, the traffic from the sheriff's departments, traffic from Kent State University, traffic from the Buckeye Career Center. Also creates an issue because it's not handicap accessible due to the lack of sidewalks and crosswalks. Also, unfortunately, this could create an issue with human trafficking. We are the 4th worst victim per resident ratio at 3.8 for 100,000 people. We are 5th in the nation at that, and we are directly against 250, which leads directly to 77. Traffickers do prey upon the weak and homeless wandering to create potential targets, and that could lead it into our neighborhood by proximity. Also, with the Friends of the Homeless guidelines, some other relative points, length of stay, 40 days is short term, 90 days is long term. Where do they go after? 19 in the guidelines for them, daily activity. Guests are expected to be out of the shelter most of the day, seeking employment, searching for housing, obtaining a skill. Guests who are unemployed or underemployed are required to actively seek employment. Where do they go? No vehicles, no sidewalks to walk on, and 3.5 miles from where the resources are to achieve these goals. And the subject of transportation. All rides are subject to the availability of the approval of staff. Transportation services are limited in nature. This indicates there is no consistent transportation plan and vehicles are limited. Walking will still be the primary source of transportation in Ohio weather from October through mid-April. It's cold and raining and snowing, making 3.5 miles not a feasible walking distance. Also, when we spoke with Friends of the Homeless, it was indicated that they would have to absorb the transportation costs when going to and from the central business district, and they'd have to run shuttles every couple hours, which they would have to take on an already a shoestring budget. Also, on the zoning aspect of things, for the city maps, the lot is considered part of the business district and is directly against the industrial district and corporation limits. The below information is taken directly from the complete codified ordinance in New Philadelphia. Business district objectives are stated as follows. A, to provide sufficient but not excessive land area for the business and commercial needs of the community. This is neither business or commercial. B, to foster the continuation of existing business and commercial establishments and to provide the appropriate space for the expansion and development of new business and commercial establishments. This is a prime commercially zoned location, and the Friends of the Homeless structure will not appear to foster the growth of business in the area. It is not creating new jobs and is exempt from paying taxes as a 501(c)(3). C, to encourage the tendency of business and commercial establishments and to group in centers for the mutual advantage of such establishments and their customers. This does not appear to be an advantage to or a help in any existing business currently in the area. D, to prohibit development from which is detrimental or blighting influences on the premises or the neighborhood of which would be incompatible or impair the enjoyment of the neighboring premises. Known property value decrease with the construction of the Friends of the Homeless shelter. Safety concerns, especially given the remote area of city limits. Also, going down to principal uses. Offices, administrations, offices, administrative, professional, and service offices, they do not fit that criteria. They are not retail sales. They are not storage or wholesale facilities. They are not a service, personal, or custom workshop. They're not a gasoline station, radio stations. They're not a hotel or a motel. They do not fit the criteria as they are not a for-profit business, and so on and so forth. If we go to, also it appears they are going on a determination of similar use for this area. It's brought to my attention that May 10th, 2022, they've already denied a similar use exemption in the business district. And when we go through the businesses that are already there, Ready Store is in the business district. That's a storage rental company, no similarity. The Tuscarawas County Art Guild, that's an art exhibition center. It is a 501(c), but there's no similarity as the objective and nature of the business is different. And Schönbrunn Healthcare is also there. This is a for-profit business, not a 501(c) that specializes in post-hospital rehabilitation and care, and there's no similarity there. Those are issues in our opposition to the proposed site.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? We're trying to keep it to 5 minutes. Yes,
I think somebody from
So we're trying to keep 5 minutes. I know that was a little longer, but you were trying to hear your concerns, but we try to keep it to 5 minutes.
I will be under 5 minutes, thank you.
Thank you.
I share the same concerns that
Oh.
Jake.
Name and address.
Get your
Oh,
name
I'm
and
sorry, Gary
address.
Crothers. I live at 1943 Brightwood Road,
Thank you.
southeast Newfane.
Thank you.
I've lived in the area for 50 years. I think most people probably on the council don't have a very good idea of what Brightwood is like. It's a mixture of retirement and young families moving in with children. We have 177 private residences. We have 15 businesses in that area. It's a quiet, peaceful community. We have no streetlights, no sidewalks, so anybody walking in that area along Brightwood Road incurs a lot of traffic, and that's a concern of ours. We're concerned about property values. We're certainly concerned about safety issues. Some of the lots are wooded and large, and it's very easy for people to be in there and be causing problems for us. We're concerned about our property safety and security. I won't reiterate the problems with the location, but it seems like it's an area that the city is kind of forcing it out to. The homeless shelter, when we met with them, they don't want to be there. They've said it's the least desirable of all the areas that have been proposed to them. It seems like the city doesn't want them here, and they're trying to push them out to the city limits as far as they can. The Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Department covers 600 square miles. They only have a few patrolmen on duty, and if we have a call in that area in regards to homeless resident problems or people in our area, it takes a while for them to respond. So we don't have very good police coverage. We have met with the community, with the county commissioners and with the township trustees for Goshen Township, and they have all stated to us, and I think we asked them to send you a letter stating that they think this is a very poor location. There's a tremendous amount of traffic in that area with semis and tractor trailers and cars, as Jake has commented on. And it makes no sense to put it that far away from the agencies that they need and the police department that is going to have to provide the coverage there. According to some police logs that we pulled off your systems, is that there's been over 400 logged police calls to homeless and drug issues in the last 3 or 4 years. And not all of that is associated with the shelter, but some of it is. And by their own admission, the administrator of the shelter indicated that they have between 65 and 70%, 60 to 65% of their residents have substance abuse issues and or mental health issues. We're not equipped in Brightwood to deal with those kind of situations. It makes more sense for it to be closer to the center of the city for the services involved. And also, I know that I've spoken to business representatives in that area, and of all the people that I've spoken to, which is quite a number in Brightwood, the majority, I've only found 2 people that are in favor of it, and all the businesses that I've spoken with have been opposed to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Ed Verhoeven. I live at 1929 Brightwood Road. There are only 2 issues I'd like to draw attention to. The nursing home is within, 100 feet of this proposed facility. And by necessity, nursing homes have drugs delivered to them on a regular basis. And you're gonna have people in this homeless shelter who may be addicted. And this is right across the road from them. And the nursing homes, as a general rule, don't have a real security force. One more thing about a quarter of a mile toward New Philadelphia, on the same side of the road, a proposed site was turned down by the city of New Philadelphia. Very similar surroundings. And I believe, I'm not certain on the second one, but I believe that further up the road, one was turned down on the right-hand side, probably, within a mile. So it just seems awful curious to me that we would want to locate this thing here when we turn down similar sites, and we have all these issues that other people have brought to bear. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Ashley Castile, and I live at 3273 Crescent Street in Brightwood. And I guess I'm just gonna be like the third person then who is not like opposed to the homeless shelter being located where it's proposed. I really have no problem with it. I mean, I'm a mom, my daughter is here. And, you know, like everyone in that area knows that we already live next to a prison. There's 2,000 prison breaks every year in the United States. And so this idea that, you know, vilifying the homeless and saying that they are going to be causing all of these issues in the area and just going to be left to their own devices at this shelter just seems kind of absurd to me. And I also heard a pretty hearty amen after the invocation. So it's a little surprising to me that we are having such strong opposition to a homeless shelter when that is a Christian calling. And the homeless problem isn't going to go away if we don't build a shelter. So I would just ask that people think about the homeless not as a blight, but as an opportunity to improve the community and draw more people in.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Ed Lee, and I live at 1633 Brightwood Road. I've got a couple other points. First, I'd like maybe everyone to stand up who's in favor of what Jake had to say as far as putting all that information. If you'd all stand, give an idea of the number of people that agree with what Jake has to say. But I think you may be seated. Thank you. One thing I think to look at, though, is economics. I think the Times Reporter actually said that they were maybe going to sell this lot for $425,000. And I think that's an enormous amount of money for that lot. But you're also going to have to put water and sewer into that facility. You're also going to have to build that facility there. And I believe that that could be a tremendous amount of money for a valuable piece of property. I think it's also a major entryway in the industrial park that goes down to, you know, ODOT and the other businesses that are down there. I think it could be better used for an entryway into that industrial park than to really put a homeless shelter there. I think downtown, where it's located now, makes a lot more economical sense. As far as transportation, it's a lot easier for people to walk downtown as their needs are to either go to the courthouse or wherever else they may need to go. There's no sidewalks. The bridge crossing there is not good. They say they're going to transport people back and forth. I know if people are waiting for transportation, they're not going to be real eager to sit there and wait for a long period of time. They're going to take off walking or go wherever they want to go. And I just don't believe it's a very good site to think of economically, feasibility, and transportation-wise. And I'll warm my time to someone else. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
My name's Rod Wilson. I live at 1640 Brightwood Road. I'd like to talk a little bit about, I'd like to follow up by saying that I agree with everything that our group here has talked about. It does seem like a very poor location for this type of facility. I would think there's much better locations where they have closer to the access to the needs that these folks have. I also would like to talk about the site itself where they're at. Nobody that I know of has addressed a question of why can't the site that they have, why can't it be rebuilt? They rebuild a house or rebuild a facility, build a new facility on that site. It's my understanding the existing facility is deteriorating and they need a new facility. So the logical question to me is, why can't you build a site, build on that site? So I'd like to see that question addressed. And number two, I'd like to talk about the safety of the proposed location down adjacent to 250 there at Ricer Avenue. As Ed pointed out, people are probably, they're expected to leave the facility during the daytime. So unless they have transportation, and I'm not sure who's going to furnish transportation at this point, but somebody's going to have to pay for transportation. It isn't going to magically appear. So if there's no transportation, folks are going to walk. When they leave the site, there is no real safe facilities for them to walk along the existing streets back into New Philadelphia where they have access to the needs that they're supposed to be, that they have for seeking unemployment, medical, going to drugstores, whatever that their needs are. Those facilities are here in town, so they've got to get from out there into here somehow. Now, the existing facilities, once you step off of that piece of property onto Ricer Avenue, there's a traffic signal there, but there's no don't walk lights. That's going to create a problem for people. There are no sidewalks, as been pointed out. The bridge that crosses over 250, I don't think anybody here would like to ask people to walk across that bridge. It's just simply not designed to handle pedestrian traffic. And once you get across the bridge and start into town, there are no sidewalks there either. And that road, East High Avenue, years ago, was and still is a two-lane road. But years ago, the shoulders were widened on most of that road because there were turning accidents, left turning accidents on that road, and rear end accidents. So the shoulders were widened to give people a place to go and get around somebody that's stopping to turn left, or somebody that's turning left coming at you. That provides a safe area and has reduced the accidents out there substantially. The right-of-way of the road, to the best of my knowledge, is probably not going to be wide enough to add sidewalks. I think most of the right-of-way has been used by the road and the shoulders at this point. So to make that safe, that means that somebody's going to have to purchase right-of-way from all those property owners from the site into town, or into where the existing sidewalks are at. That's going to be a significant expense. I don't know who's going to bear that cost. But there is going to be a lot of additional cost that I'm not sure people have thought through yet that are going to be needed. There's going to be a lot of additional money to provide a safe access for these folks to walk on between where the proposed site is now and to get into town here where their facilities are at that they need. So I think it would behoove all of us to think seriously about where is the best place to put this homeless shelter. There are homeless people, as this lady here pointed out. They're here. We've got a site for them. So unless we just abandon it and say we're not going to deal with this anymore, there are going to have to be some decisions made. But we need to think this thing through before we actually make these decisions. There's a lot of issues here and genuine safety issues for the folks in the homeless shelter if it is put out at the location where it's being proposed for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Townsend, and I'm at 3115 Brightwood Drive Southeast. I have several issues with this site and questions, I guess, that are unanswered from the homeless shelter. They say 80 to 85% of the residents are from Tuscarawas County. What criteria are they using to qualify them as a resident? It's mostly now staffed with volunteers. I see on their Facebook page, we're hiring, no experience needed. And from, a lot of, not everyone, but a lot of the people there, do have mental issues and drug problems. And, and now we're going to more than double it in size. It is going to go from like 35 or 36 rooms to 30 male, 30 female, and 6 families. So, the safety is definitely concerned, the inexperienced staff. And then also, what do I want to say? We definitely have a lot of wooded area around us. We have 28 acres of cornfields and woods that line the back of most of our houses there. There's no alleyways, there's no areas to patrol, and New Philly wouldn't even be patrolling it for us. It would be that would fall in the Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Department, because that is out of New Philly jurisdiction then. So we would have no patrol going through our neighborhoods to monitor things, and they can't even go through a lot of our neighborhoods. They would have to get out and walk on foot around a lot of our houses to see, investigate possible complaints or anything that's going on. I have a little girl, and I'm terrified of the human trafficking and the drug trafficking that may bring, being right off of the exit. And then I also definitely have some questions with the background checks. Does anyone have any information on how those are done currently?
Well, somebody here from the Friends of the Homeless is here. I think you can answer those questions.
Okay. We've addressed that issue before. Is there anybody here from the Friends of the Homeless?
I can.
Yeah, he's here.
There he is.
If you let him answer, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Reverend Joseph Francaro. I am the president of the board for Friends of the Homeless. I can address the background check issue. Every background check is run through the New Philadelphia Police Department. They do give them to us. Our stipulations are that absolutely no one who has any kind of violation of any sex crime, any arson, any violent crime is allowed in the shelter. And we do try to network with other shelters in other counties in order to provide people with space, so that we do not just turn them out into the street. That's the absolute last thing that we want to do or would allow our staff to do.
Are you in favor of the locations being closed?
It is not ideal, but unfortunately, the zoning codes make it very difficult to build anywhere else.
Thank you.
I just have one quick question. So if you go with state funding for some of the.
Well, I'm not sure we need to, that's not the purpose here for that to be questioned. That, if you got
Well, this
concerns.
is pertaining to her question. You asked how the background checks are done, but if state funding is applied,
Well,
I'd like to know from him, do we still do the background checks? Because it's my understanding that we do not.
The Reverend, I know, has been really good at meeting with various groups. I'm sure if you wanted to have a meeting with him, that he would be happy to address your concerns at that time. I know he's met with other groups at different proposals, different sites.
And we would be very open to having a community meeting in order to discuss all of your concerns, whether or not if we get approval for the variance. If not, the issue becomes moot.
Yeah, that is my concern with, like, right now, that's what they said, that the background checks are gonna be. But if they get state or federal funding, or it's zoned differently, is the background check gonna be done by the New Philly Police Department? Is the background check going to, allow different types of people there? Or is there a background check going to be done at all?
Well, there's
those are-
criteria for that, ma'am, and, I don't think this is the place to have that discussion.
Okay, I'm just concerned about the safety of
I
my
am.
daughter, and I would be living right
Sure.
behind that, so that is my biggest concern.
Sure.
And then, again, we have the New Philly stack of police logs from 21, 22, 23. Jake, did you bring?
We have those as
They're
well.
about this big. We can get those too if you'd like to thumb through them. Not all from the shelter, but some shelter, the residents of the shelter, and just the homeless issues in New Philadelphia themselves. And now we're talking about doubling the shelter, and then you're not even able to help us and patrol our neighborhood. So I feel like you're passing the buck onto the sheriff's department or someone else that's not capable of helping us when we would need help because you can't even secure our neighborhoods.
All right, I mean, we're kind of covering the same areas, unless somebody's got something new to say. I think we've had enough public participation on this subject tonight, and
Mr. President, I do have a slightly different angle, if I may, and would it be appropriate if I speak from here?
Yeah.
yes.
Just real quick, I just made some notes here, and
And your name and address?
my name is Corey Moner, and I'm the administrator at Schundra Healthcare, the nursing home next door to the proposed site. And I will tell you folks, that I'm in the business of caring for people. That's what I do there. That's why I'm in this business, and I quite frankly enjoy it. I will tell you though that over the last 5 or 10 years or whatever, we have, the clientele has changed, the community has changed, and we have taken some folks in a little younger, the history of drug dependency and maybe a little bit of mental health here and there. And most of the time, it has not turned out well for us, I would tell you. I've had the sheriff's department there, taking people out because they've been unruly and threatening to folks and different things like that. And I will tell you that, it's been my experience that mental health and drugs, it doesn't really mix well with the elderly in the nursing home. And that's a concern of mine. I have a relative, I have a niece who has addiction and mental health, and I pray for her. I wish she didn't have the problems that she did, that she does have, but it's scary. Some of the things that happened is scary, and having those folks potentially in that area around such a vulnerable clientele, the elderly is a little bit troublesome for me. And I know somebody had mentioned about the prison being nearby, and we struggle with that too. A lot of times whenever they leave the prison, they come up through our parking lot, cut through the alley to get to the main road, and we have had some issues with people coming in wanting to use the telephone and different things, and we don't have a security group. It's unfortunately me sometimes, and it has presented some problems in the past. So we have about 13 to 15 doors. We have more doors than I'd like to have in the nursing home. And it presents a real issue with entry and those types of things for people that are walking by or whatever. We had a gentleman about a month ago trying to get in our door at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know who he was or where he came from. Unfortunately, by the time the police came, he was gone, and that was, it was an issue. Somebody else mentioned the medications. We do have a lot of medications. We have 4 med carts. We have nightly deliveries for medications at the facility, and that's a concern with somebody who is addicted to drugs and different things like that, that they're not always thinking straight, and we all know what addiction can do sometimes. And I guess lastly, I am concerned about we have 100 employees, around 76 residents, and I am concerned. People don't want to bring their loved one across town sometimes because of the distance. And I'm not sure what they're gonna think about our business, if we have a homeless shelter nearby and what their thoughts might be. Hopefully, maybe it's not gonna be bad as what some people might think, but at the same time, that's a pretty big gamble when you're talking about people's loved ones and the responsibility that we have to care for them. So, just wanted to bring those concerns and thoughts to the group, and I appreciate the time, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, then.
On behalf of the Brightwood community that showed up, we would just like to thank you guys for hearing us tonight.
Sure.
Our concerns.
Thank you for coming.
Hi, my name is Leslie Booth. I live at 1586 Brightwood Road. I have been a 4-H advisor for over 20-some years. We live actually right where the homeless shelter would be. We have actually helped the homeless shelter in the past. However, my safety is for my kids. I have kids represented here tonight and families for my 4-H. We have kids bring their animals to our house. We walk them in those woods. We take the kids hiking in those woods to hunt for their bug projects. We also do Bible studies with kids in our home. my security is, I'm not discriminating against anybody, but I have to watch for the safety of these kids. I don't want to take them out in the field and have them, you know, come up on a needle or anything. I work in the medical field also, so I agree with you. It is hard, and I feel sorry for the homeless, but their place should be closer to town. Not having access to that is a big concern for us. Thank you.
Mr. President, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I did not get her name.
Leslie Booth.
Leslie Booth. All right, we thank you folks for coming and sharing your concerns with us this evening. It's in the early stages here. I'm sure there'll be more meetings that you'll be out there for people to attend and to voice their concerns. So, again, we'll move on to our legislative agenda. Ms. Courtwright.
Ordinance number 7, 2023, an ordinance by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, authorizing the establishment of an agency fund called the Credit Memo Clearing Fund for the purpose of holding overpayment of utility bills and applying those credits back to the customers of the city of New Philadelphia and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Ricklick,
Mr. President, I ask we suspend the rules for ordinance 7, 2023.
do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Pace, thank you. In discussion by administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Rippet.
Yes.
All right, rules have been suspended. Mr. Ricklick,
Mr. President, I ask that we pass ordinance 7, 2023.
do I have a second? Mr. Pace, thank you. In discussion by the community, administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Rippet.
Yes.
All right, ordinance 7, 2023 has passed.
Resolution number 5, 2023, a resolution by the council of the city of New Philadelphia, Tuscarawas County, Ohio, authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Michael Baker International Incorporated to provide engineering and technical services to the city of New Philadelphia at Harry Clever Field Airport and declaring an emergency. Third reading.
Is there any action to be taken by council on this legislation tonight? Mr. Lanzer?
Yes, Mr. President, I ask that we pass resolution 5, 2023.
Do I have a second?
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Holland, thank you. In discussion by community, administration, council, roll call.
Mr. Lanzer.
Yes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mr. Pace.
Yes.
Mrs. Ramos.
Yes.
Mr. Ricklick.
Yes.
Mr. Rippet.
Yes.
All right, resolution 5, 2023 has passed.
And that concludes legislation for this evening, Mr. President.
All right, is there any?
Point of order, you forgot council comments.
Do that again. Do we have any council comments this evening? Yes, Mrs. Ramos.
Thank you. Okay, so we've been talking about zoning, and I did mention some of my concerns earlier, but I wanted to share an additional concern that I got received from one of my constituents regarding some of the same. Zoning regulations is such as limiting a single-family home to single-family, we've already discussed that. The issues of junk vehicles, trailers, and even boats in yards. I wasn't aware of boats in yards without trailers. And I'll get locations. Cars, boats, trailers, trucks, which don't have up-to-date license plates, and in fact, there is a car across from my house that doesn't even have any plates on it. I think they're probably working on that. I finally called them today. And their concern is the quantity of campers and boats stored in people's yards. Of course, I've already mentioned the number of cars parked in people's yards. I'm talking yards, not parking lots or driveways. So their question is, Dover has laws in place where you're not able to do this. And sadly, they go on to say, New Philly seems only to care about the new developments and nothing about the old neighborhoods, which are the core of the city. People come to town and visit, and they think that New Philly is poverty-stricken. And I can see that, sometimes I have some questions. But I know that we're working on zoning, and I'll get a list about the junk vehicles. They promised to send me a list, but that is a concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos. Any other council comments? All right, is there any unfinished or old business to discuss tonight? Is there any new business to discuss tonight? Ms. Ramos?
Yes. I've mentioned this before in emails to different people, but during my research for our committee meeting on the homeless shelter, and a location in a residential area, I took the opportunity to do some research, not in depth, but I did send some links to the law director. The cities that have permitted homeless shelters have developed rules or ordinances, legislation governing the operation thereof. And I really think that we need to look at that, to develop rules. I don't know what would the best way to approach that is assigning it to committee or committee the whole. I think we need to discuss that, because we do have a current location. We don't know where the other location is going to end up, but currently we have a shelter here. Other businesses have rules and regulations, residents do too, etc., and churches for the way they have to operate. And I would like to see us start to discuss legislation for the operation of the homeless shelter.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ramos. Anyone else? Hearing none, I accept a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I would make the motion that we adjourn this meeting of